Hi, I'm Sanjana. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Lockdown Literary Club. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 15 books I've read between Jan and June 2020. These are the books. I have 11 of them here with me. 2 of them are ebooks and 2 of them I lent out to friends. A couple of technical difficulties I had was that I wasn't loud enough, so I'm going to speak louder this time. And also my camera was shaking because it was stacked on things, but I realized I have a music stand, which is what this is propped on today. What instrument I play, you ask? I play the flute, not that anyone cares, but I play the flute. So to keep the reviews concise, I'm definitely going to have to rate them from 1 to 5. So just so you guys have an understanding on how I rate books, I will tell you. 1 means it's a terrible book. I wish I didn't read it, and I kind of hate myself for reading it, and please don't read it. 2 means it's either a bad book or a book that had some glaring faults that I couldn't get over, or I don't think anyone else should get over. 3 means it's a good book, I enjoyed it. 4 means I loved the book and that it's either really well written or really good story. 5 is a rating I don't usually give books. It's often pretty subjective which books I give 5 to. There might not be that technically different from books that are 4 or 3 stars, but I give them 5 because these are the books that have a profound impact on me, and the characters or the story are as real to me as real people. So without wasting any more time, let me just get into the books. So the first book I read this year, I don't actually have with me. It's Find Me by Andrew Aciman, which was released in November 2019, but I finally got around to reading it this year. Find Me is a sequel to the book Call Me By Your Name. Call Me By Your Name is a 5-star read for me. Personally, I loved that book. I, in fact, named my dog after a character in that book. So to give you a brief synopsis of both the books. So the first book, Call Me By Your Name, it's a love story, but it's also a coming-of-age story and about finding yourself and discovering your sexuality. And it's set in 1980s, 70s, 80s in Italy. This book, Find Me, is set sometime 15-20 years after the first book. And it focuses on 3 characters from the first book. The main protagonists, Oliver and Elio, and also Elio's father, Samuel. I actually didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars because I thought it wasn't a compelling book because most of the story was focused on Elio's father, Samuel, who's a character we got very little of in the first book. But in the first book, he was brilliant because he has this speech at the very end, which I adored. But in this book, it was just his story. I didn't really care for it. This book has an overarching theme of father figures and sexualizing them, which I wasn't quite comfortable with. Most of the story is from Samuel's perspective, then we get a little bit from Elio's and Oliver's perspective too. But the main thing that worked for me in the first book was a dynamic between Elio and Oliver, which is completely absent in this book, so I didn't like it. If you guys have read or watched the movie Call Me By Your Name, I wouldn't recommend this book because it kind of takes away from the original story. If you haven't read Call Me By Your Name, please read it. It's amazing. It's a beautiful book. This one, not so much, so skip. Next book I read. This book, oh God, I hated this book, is The Lone Empress by Vaasanthi. So this book, it took me 3 months to read, and oh God, it was terrible. Oh, what can I say about this? I was actually really excited for this book because I'm trying to learn as much as I can about Indian politics because it's surprisingly one of my weaker subjects. It's a biography of Jayalalitha. So Jayalalitha was a politician from Tamil Nadu. She, at the age of 16, became an actress and was a really popular actress in her time. She went into politics and served as the chief minister of Tamil Nadu for 3 to 4 terms. She died in office, so I think 4 terms. But the issue with this book is the story the author is telling could have been told in 1/4 of the book. It just goes on and on and on. And it's very repetitive. The author inserts a lot of her own opinions into the book, and if it would have been fine if she was assertive about her opinions, but she isn't. She hasn't quite made up her mind about how she feels about Jayalalitha. Because of that, it's very inconsistent and boring. There's another book about her life called The Queen, I think, which was later used to adapt into a TV show. So maybe, hopefully, that's a better book about Jayalalitha's life. This one isn't, so if you want to learn about her, read the other book, not this one. It's bad. So the third book I read, this I read sometime in May, is Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, and it's a play. It's a fairly short play. This was written in 1947, Indian independence. It's set in the 50s era of like post-World War II American dream and consumerism. It deals with the failings of the American dream and this. I haven't read too many plays, so I have a hard time judging them. I think they are to be visually experienced. This is not the medium that you're supposed to consume plays in. So, but I still gave it 4 stars because I thought it was really good. The themes were explored really well and I enjoyed it. So I would recommend it. It's a classic, so it's good. The next book I read is Wonder Girls by Varsha Adusumilli. This is non-fiction and it's a collection of stories about Indian women pursuing different careers and their journey in their respective fields. Some of these stories are really cool and inspirational. And I think that was the author's objective. She wanted young women in India to have examples of other women pursuing careers in a variety of fields. So in that objective, I think it's successful. But I gave it 2 stars because it is repetitive in the sense so there's 15 stories in here and each story is structured exactly the same way, which defeats the purpose because when there's 15 different women pursuing completely different careers, how do you get their life to sound the same? I don't know. I think that what the author did was had a questionnaire and she asked people the same set of questions and they all gave her answers and then she restructured that into a story. But because of that, it's a little dull. But if you are looking for stories about badass Indian women, then I would recommend it. But I couldn't look past the writing style and the way this book is structured. But representation is important, so here, 15 women. And the author, 16. She published a book, which is pretty cool. So 15 examples of how you can do anything you set your mind to. Next book I read, which I also don't have with me, is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. This is a self-help book. It's really popular. Mark Manson is a blogger, and I think he also gives a lot of inspirational speeches. And I thought the book was fine. Personally, I didn't feel like I learned anything from it that most self-help books don't already teach you. Maybe check out one of his speeches, and if he's someone that works for you, definitely read this book. Personally, I have a hard time reading and digesting self-help books because I don't know how well they work. For me, I think they inspire me for a day, maybe a week, and after that, it doesn't really affect my life. So I gave it 2 out of 5 stars for the only fault of being pretty generic. A lot of people seem to like this book, so if that's what works for you, by all means read it. The point of the book is that pick the things you want to care about and just like really focus on them, which you would think is intuitive, but apparently you need to write a whole book about it. So, oh, that was sassy, I'm sorry. If you like the book, good for you. It's just not my genre. So getting into June, so I actually read 10 books in June and most of them were amazing books. So I'm excited to recommend them to you. So the first book I read is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This book is about a biracial family. It's set in the 1970s in Ohio. So the book revolves around the 5 characters in the family, James and Marilyn, the parents. James is Chinese American, Marilyn is Caucasian, and the kids are obviously mixed race, so they are Nathan, Lydia, and Hannah. Lydia, the middle child, ironically enough, is the most beloved of the family. The entire family's life, it seems like, revolves around Lydia. It kind of explores the burden of being the favorite child. It has a lot of really cool themes about racial prejudices, being outsiders, peer pressure, expectations we have for our children, especially Asian children. It's a whole other level. So it's all in there, and I think it's really well written. It's a thriller. So basically, I'm not spoiling this for you. Lydia is dead when this book starts, so you're trying to figure out what happened, and it's not really about how it happened. It's more about why it happened. This might be Celeste's first book. So this is 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed it. No, none of the characters are likable. Actually, no, of the 5, I like one of them. I won't tell you which one, but it's the person that gets the least amount of page time. I'm trying to translate screen time to books, so page time. It's the person that gets the least amount of page time. But yes, it's a good book. Next book, moving right on, is This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay. This is also nonfiction. Adam Kay was a junior doctor for 6-7 years, and then he quit and became a screenwriter. But this is his experience, the years he spent right after medical school practicing medicine. He becomes a gynecologist. And part of the program is that he journals. He just revised, edited, and published all his journal entries, and each chapter has an introduction by him. And the thing I want to say about this book, it's really, really funny. I really enjoyed it. There were parts of it that are sad and make you tear up because it's based on real life and people die sometimes. It's a theme, isn't it? Like doctors using humor to explore the realities of life and death. It gives you a good perspective of what lives of doctors are like, and because I think often we lack empathy for those who are treating us, and especially this year, like all the first responders, the doctors are working overtime to deal with patients in the corona pandemic, so it doesn't hurt to have a little empathy for them. So read this book, it's really good. Oh, 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a 5-star read, I'm just going to tell you beforehand, and you'll realize why I'm mumbling and I'm unable to articulate why I love this book, because I can't. When I love something, I really can't tell you exactly why. It's personal. Before I get ahead of myself, let me set it up. It's about 2 teenagers in Ireland. It takes you through their life for 4 or 5 years, from their senior year of high school to end of college. And the 2 main characters, Marianne and Connell, are, I don't know, they're real people to me. I feel like they are so flushed out that they are real, actual people to me, and I don't know how to give a higher compliment to this book. It is a love story, but it's not a romance book, if that makes sense. It's more an exploration of the part class, popularity, miscommunication, oppression, abuse, everything plays into a relationship and how these 2 explore it. When the book starts out, both of them have these huge faults, which objectively might make them unlikable, but which is what humanized them to me. Like Marianne is rifled with insecurities and self-hate, whereas Connell is very passive and often a bystander to Marianne being bullied in this book initially, but they both learn a lot through the course of the book, and they grow, and I feel like they're genuinely trying to be good people. And character growth is just one of those things that makes me appreciate a book, because very few authors do it well, and I feel like Sally Rooney did it really well. Like, even when there's miscommunication, it might be frustrating in a subpar novel, but here it made sense, their miscommunication, because you get the story from both their perspectives and you see why they think a certain way and why they might misconstrue something, because that's exactly in their personality. So, and if you read it and can't quite understand why it means so much to me, I can't tell you. I just like messed up, angsty characters who are very self-aware about who they are. The next book I read was A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams is another famous playwright, just like Arthur Miller. This book actually won the Pulitzer Prize for drama, and it's about 3 characters, Stanley and Stella Kowalski, a couple, and Stella's sister, Blanche Du Bois. So Blanche Du Bois comes to New Orleans to visit Stanley and Stella, and Stanley and Blanche do not get along at all. Throughout the play, they butt heads a lot. And they're both fairly unlikable characters for me, particularly because Blanche is a pathological liar, but there's also a reason for why that is. And Stanley's a stereotypical macho man who's loud, abusive, and charming, but maybe charming for the 1950s, definitely not charming today. This is problematic behavior. When this play was on Broadway and when the movie was made, it was played by Marlon Brando. And I think maybe that's why people liked this play, because the performances were great and Marlon Brando is a pretty charismatic actor. Reading it just made me really dislike Stanley's character. By the end of it, I didn't really get the point of the play. It ends on a very weird note, and I don't know if any of the characters took away the lessons they were supposed to take away from the events of the play. Because Tennessee Williams is such a celebrated playwright, I'm going to try one of his other plays and see if it makes me change my mind on this play. If not, I don't know. It's just maybe he's not for me. So anyway, I gave it 2 out of 5, but it's a very popular pop culture reference comes from. If you've ever seen in any media a man wearing a vest, a white wife beater, yelling Stella, Stella, then that's from this player. The next book I read, I really liked, is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. So the main character, Arthur Less, which is why the book is called Less, is a man about to turn 50. How this book starts out is that his ex-boyfriend is going to get married and invites him to the wedding. And he doesn't really want to go, so he decides instead of going, he's going to say yes to all the offers he got that year. So he's a writer, so he decides to accept offers and travel around the world basically, because he goes to Mexico for a conference, Germany to teach a class, Japan to be a food taster and write reviews. To avoid his ex-boyfriend's wedding, he just goes on a journey to find himself. He's kind of a man-child. He hasn't quite figured out who he is, and he's about to turn 50, so he's having a freak out about it. The writing style is excellent, and there's a lot of like really cool, cute metaphors in there that I enjoy. I'm a sucker for metaphors. So Arthur is mildly successful in the sense that he publishes one book called Calypso, which is a gay retelling of the Odyssey. But also even this book is in a way a gay retelling of the Odyssey, because Arthur also goes on a journey to find himself, find his way home. So I thought that was quite cool and neat. But there's a line in here which perfectly like sums up the book. And I thought, like, I like that when books insert their own synopsis into the book. So a character goes, a white middle-aged American man walking around with his white middle-aged American worries. That's this book. And you would think, like, I'm none of those things. I'm not white, American, middle-aged, or homosexual. How would I connect to this character? But that's the point of the book. Like, he seems pretty ordinary, but you still empathize with him because it's told really well. Read it, it's really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is The Forest of Enchantments by Chitra, Banerjee, Divakaruni. This book is a retelling of the Ramayana from Sita's perspective. I've read 3 books by this author, and this is the one I like the best. Particularly liked her focus on Sita's childhood, like the place she grew up, which is Maithila. It made me really nostalgic for my childhood because there was no part of this book that I didn't like, no character or story in this book that I didn't actually already know, which is really surprising because I've never read the Ramayana. The only way I know anything about it is from all the stories my grandma told me growing up. And she did a really good job because I knew everyone in this book, and kind of even like happy for the Hindu tradition of like telling stories orally, because that's part of our culture. So I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it's a good book. Read it. So the next book I read, I don't actually have a copy of. It's The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. So this book, I guess, can fall under the self-help genre because it is telling you how to change your habits and change your life, but it's the sort of book I really enjoy because it takes a scientific approach to things. It looks at research and experiments and testing theories, and that's how I like my advice. I need it to be factual. So Power of Habit, it basically explores like habits, like why we have habits, how to create habits. There's a lot of different approaches it takes. It looks at addiction, memory, organizational structures, advertising. Like, I'm sure everyone will find something helpful in this book because it explores how our brain functions essentially and how we create habits and how that can influence how we advertise or if you want to exercise more, if you want to perform better at your work, if you want to be a better manager, anything, this book is just great. I think it's something everyone should read. If there's a self-help book I'll ever recommend, this might be it. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a really good book. The next book I read, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. This is also another excellent book. It's basically the history of our species, Homo sapiens, which is why the book is called Sapiens. In the beginning, it does kind of introduce you from the beginning of time and space, which is Big Bang. And from there it gives you a brief history of the 13.5 billion years it took us to get here. I think that's right. It mostly focuses on the history of our species and the major changes in it, which happened in the last 70,000 years. And it's such a cool book to read. I actually want to read this book every year just because it takes you out of your like tiny puny life and gives you such a macro perspective of what it means to be human, what it means to belong to this species, what our evolution has been, what actually led us here. Because We're often focused on 60 to 100 years of our life. And we forget that, like, on the grand scheme of things, we're like blips. So, I don't know, it just like really shakes you up and just reorients you. And books that do that are rare. So if you're going to only read one book I've recommended today, then I would say read Sapiens, because I think more of us need to sometimes step outside of our shoes and see the world from a different perspective. And this definitely helps you do that. And you learn a lot about human beings and the world and history. So do it. Oh, we only have 2 left. Yay. Almost to the end. Power through. The next book I read is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Naveen. This book has been made into a movie that came out this year. I didn't like the book or the movie, though I did think parts of the book were better than the movie. It's about 2 characters, Theodore Finch and Violet Markey. This book was compared to Fault in Our Stars, which kind of offended me because Fault in Our Stars is a much better book than this. I think the things they have in common is that they both kind of explore teenagers and death and dying and living in Indiana, which is where this book and Fault in Our Stars is set. There were parts of the book I enjoyed. It really dropped the ball on the ending. The last 50, 60 pages just progressively made me more mad. Premise of the book is that both Theodore and Violet have gone through traumatic experiences in their life, which made them suicidal. In the beginning of this book, both of them are attempting to commit suicide, and they meet, and it's a question of will they save each other, can they save each other, and teenage romance and all that jazz. For the most part, I didn't mind the book. I thought it was okay, but all of the adults in this book, no exception, are just really shitty people. I don't know if anyone learned anything. Like, some events happen and you're supposed to get closure about it, but you don't, because the adults did not change. So if the end result of the book is that things are no better than they were in the beginning, or no worse, then what's the point? What is the point? I don't know. This book made me mad. I might actually do a spoiler review of this book just to vent out all the rage I have for it. I'm going to try and say a good thing about the book is that the author clearly has this love for Indiana, which really shines through. It's the thing in the book is that they're exploring all the hidden gems of Indiana, all the small kitschy places. And it's kind of cute. I liked the places that they picked. But yeah, I don't know, 2 stars. The last book is The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. All the post-its. I actually do this for a lot of books. I put sticky tabs for things I want to remember. Even actually often write in the margins of the book. I write with pencil. Don't freak out. I write with pencil. Besides the point. So Richard Dawkins is a really famous atheist. He often gives a lot of speeches and holds panels about atheism, and he comes at it from a scientific approach. This book is basically focused on disproving the existence of God, particularly the Abrahamic God of like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He doesn't really get into polytheistic religions or other East Asian religions. This book is actually pretty dense. If you guys have read any philosophy books like Aristotle or Plato, this had some threads of that for me. The way he takes apart arguments really gave me flashbacks to my philosophy class in college. Part of the reason might be because he takes religious philosophers from like 900 AD or 1300 AD and then takes their arguments and then essentially destroys those arguments. So I guess because of that, maybe it felt at parts a little dense and self-congratulatory. I will say this, he's not for everyone. He's definitely not for everyone. He's very condescending and arrogant, but that doesn't change the fact that this book is very well argued. He's a very well-read and intelligent man, and that comes through. And so this book is just like filled with references, some very obscure. So every time I found an obscure reference that I got, I was like, oh damn, I'm smart. Made me feel good about myself. I would just caution you before you read it that he is condescending and mean at times. Religion is something you want to explore from an objective lens. Then read it. I personally, myself, am an atheist, but I don't feel the need to convince everyone that God is a delusion. Not all atheists have to agree. If you're exploring the subject, it is still a really good book. I gave it 4 stars, more for the references than him. So that's it. Those are the 15 books. I got through it. But yeah, this is my Jan to June. I still haven't done my wrap up of the books I read in July. I'm going to do that sometime in the next week. Might do a spoiler review for some of these. Like Normal People is something, if I can ever find the words, I would like to explore the themes of that a little more. And if that's something you're interested in, let me know. Okay, thank you for watching the video. If you've stuck it out till here, wow. I will see you guys next time. Bye.